Good afternoon. Let's call Prattville Planning Commission to order. Ms. Morgan, would you call roll, please?
Mayor Gillespie. Councilman Bowles. Chairman Gardner. Vice Chair McAuley. Chief Johnson. Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Hall. Mr. Nelson. And Mr. Smith.
Resolution preliminary plat, Pendlebrook subdivision plat 2, August 15th, 2013. Whereas Stone Martin Builders is developer of Pendlebrook subdivision plat 1, and whereas the proposed development is located inside the city limits at the west side of Old Ridge Road, north of existing Glenbrook subdivision plats 1 and 2, and whereas the revised sketch plan for the proposed Pendlebrook subdivision plat 2 and Glenbrook subdivision plat 3 was approved on July 18th, 2013, and whereas the city department heads have reviewed and commented on the proposed development, now therefore it be resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby gives its favorable review of the submitted preliminary plat of Pendlebrook subdivision plat 2.
Thank you, Mr. McCarr. Do I have a second to this? Second. Thank you. Who's here to represent Pendlebrook? Come up, please.
Afternoon.
How are you doing?
Y'all have before you the preliminary plat for both Pendlebrook Phase 2 and Glenbrook Phase 3 subdivision. This is a single piece of property that we are proposing to take 25 lots and add them into Phase 2 of Pendlebrook with an additional amenity lot and I believe 77 lots into the third phase of Glenbrook subdivision. For the commission's information, for everybody to remember, this is the property of Pendlebrook subdivision that was developed some years ago, sat vacant for some time. Stone Martin came in, started purchasing the 49 lots that were in phase 1, building homes, and there were an option on the table exercised by Stone Martin to purchase this remaining property 3.5 years ago, and after full approval of sketch plan and preliminary plat, this property, the owner of it filed bankruptcy before Stone Martin could close on the property, and the property went into the bankruptcy courts and stayed there for some time, and it has now come out of the bankruptcy system and is back available for purchase, and Stone Martin is trying to purchase this and develop phases of each subdivision. I have been in contact with a member of the Pendlebrook HOA board, and we've had numerous discussions, and I believe during sketch plan some of the residents expressed their desire for a pool on this amenity site, and the amenity site is located right here on lot 50. And we have gone back and forth. They had a HOA meeting Monday night, and I believe put the different amenity options to a popular vote inside the HOA, and it was determined that a pool was the choice of the HOA as a whole, and Stone Martin is now coming before. We've been able to get some numbers in on construction, and essentially that is their amenity lot, and we would like to provide them with a pool as long as we can sit down and get with the HOA and make sure everything else is okay, that they do want these lots, and as that they do want the pool and can properly maintain it and can foot the bill for the amenities post-construction, as far as maintenance and upkeep of the pool itself and the landscaping around it. So I believe that Stone Martin and HOA have come to an agreement on that, and that is Stone Martin's intention is to provide them with the amenity that they desire and that truthfully was promised to them before the bankruptcy situation. So there have been comments received by staff, and I believe Mr. Duke can comment on that, but I believe all the comments that were received by Barrett Simpson by staff have been addressed and plans resubmitted.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rice. Before we go any further, let's do a public hearing. I see like we got quite a few people in the audience. If you will, if you want to speak, would you please come up and sign in? If you want to speak now, before Mr. Duke give his presentation.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I may, just point of privilege, would like to comment on one part of the presentation here, that it was, the way I took it was going to be at no expense to the city. City's not going to be asked to come back later and accept this and maintain it, and so I do appreciate that being pointed out, or at least that's the way I perceived it.
But by no means is this a city participating project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rice. If you will, please come up and state your name and address.
Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Bill Mayfield. I live in the Pendlebrook Subdivision, 2279 Gathering Way, and I am a board member of the HOA, and I'm here to officially represent them. We have negotiated over the last couple of weeks with Stone Martin Builders, and I believe today we finally have an agreement. And I don't like the ifs and whats. Let's just be men and settle this right now. The HOA voted Monday to have a pool. We know the cost of it. We're grown adults. We approved it. Will you approve a pool? If you get the lot and if you start building houses, will you build a pool? Yes or no?
Yes, as long as
Please direct your
I'm sorry,
all
sir.
comments to us, the commissioner.
Yes,
please.
sir. I'm sorry, sir. The only other concern we had, which that sounds like an agreement, the other only was the traffic into Pendlebrook from Glenbrook. There's 74 houses. It's proposed. We got 49 now. 25 more puts us at 74. There would be actually more houses in Glenbrook, traffic coming into Pendlebrook, than Pendlebrook would actually generate itself. So we proposed to them maybe putting some speed bumps, and they said that might not be practical, but they would propose to putting 2 four-way stops in Pendlebrook Phase 2 and Glenbrook Phase 3 to slow the traffic. I believe that's a good compromise, and it wasn't mentioned earlier, but I want to make sure that we're concerned about traffic, and we would like that slowed down. And if we can do it with 2 four-way stops, we can agree to that.
All right. Any questions in the commission? All right.
I just want to make sure y'all understand that when it comes to the pool, it has nothing to do with the city.
Oh, no,
if it
sir.
happens, if it doesn't happen.
Well, no, sir, I understand
Okay.
100%. Y'all are not here to negotiate on the parties.
Right.
I understand that 100%, and that's why we came. We just wanted to make sure there's legal ease.
Yes, sir.
We attend, we might, we'd like to. Well, that don't mean nothing. Are you not? And that's why I asked them. I was sorry about going out of protocol. I
Yes,
just want
sir.
to I just want to hear, yes, we attend to. Yes, we're
Because
going
our
to.
job as this board is to
Oh, yes, sir.
approve the lots, and then
Oh,
we're
yes, sir.
out of it.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else like to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Duke, give your report, please.
Good afternoon. I'm going to speak on both. You're dealing with these as separate preliminaries because that's the way they were kind of presented to us, separate subdivisions, but the actual construction document came in as one document, so we're going to treat it that way for my report. You have in your packet, you have the city's review letter from last week that shows comments from departments. It should be behind tab number 1, just behind the resolution. You can see there that we had some basic questions about drainage, easements, some ideas about crosswalks from the engineering department. You can see the letter we received from Barrett Simpson either yesterday afternoon or today, I'm not sure which, but in essence, that from my review, that shows that we may have a couple of questions outstanding, but they're minor at this point. We basically agree in principle about what needs to be changed, and before we get to the final plans, we can work a couple of those out. But there's nothing there that we would use to recommend a delay or a denial. It looks like everything has pretty much been worked out, so we're going to recommend approval on this preliminary plat, and we will hold release of the construction documents until they get every last item addressed. So,
Okay.
glad to answer any questions at this point.
Has all these comments been entertained already? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. They have not been out to fire and engineering for review, but if I give you an example, if in the letter it states, looking at the fire comments, that those hydrants have been added as Chief Johnson had requested. So that's basically been addressed. I think there's going to be some question about crosswalks and whether or not they can be raised, but that's kind of getting back to Mr. Mayfield's comment about traffic calming or trying to slow some of that traffic down. We share that concern, and we've asked for some consideration in signage or possibly speed tables, but we'll work that out. We have kind of internally a question among staff which one might work better. The fire department's not especially a fan of speed tables, but
Good for them.
I'm not either. As you know, we'd much rather structure the subdivision in a way that you're not encouraging. You certainly want connectivity, but you're not encouraging a thoroughfare type traffic. And in the abstract here, just looking at these two subdivisions by themselves, it looks like you're encouraging that. But if you know about the overall layout for the subdivision, Glenbrook, you're looking at a great deal of connectivity and options for folks to take. And over time, you're going to see actually options allow them to go west instead of all coming back to the east. So for the life of this subdivision, which is way, way in the future, there's going to be a good bit of connectivity. There's going to be far more options than you're looking at here today. So we see that as being the better way to design speed control and traffic control than these forced facilities like a speed table or a speed bump. They generally set it up so that people slow down for the speed bump, but then they speed up between them. So it's kind of a mixed blessing. So we'd rather not do it that way. Be glad to answer any questions about the comments. Be glad to answer any questions that are not in our comments as well.
Any of the commission have any more questions for Mr. Duke at this time? What about Mr. Rice? All right. Thank you, Mr. Duke.
Thank you.
On the resolution of preliminary plat, Pennellbrook subdivision plat number 2. All in favor of this resolution, let it be known by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Thank you. Motion carried. Resolution of preliminary plat, Glenbrook subdivision plat 3. Mr. Smith, would you read that into the record, please?
Resolution preliminary plat, Glenbrook subdivision plat 3, August 15, 2013. Whereas Stone Martin Builders is the developer of Glenbrook subdivision plat 3, and whereas the proposed development is located inside the city limits at the west side of the Old Ridge Road, north of existing Glenbrook subdivisions plat 1 and 2, and whereas the revised sketch plan for the proposed Glenbrook subdivision plat 3 and Pendlebrook subdivision plat 2 was approved on July 18, 2013, and whereas the city department heads have reviewed and commented on the proposed development, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Prattville Planning Commission hereby gives its favorable review of the submitted preliminary plat of Glenbrook subdivision plat 3. So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Rice?
I believe I covered both projects. They are two separate preliminary plats, but one set of engineering plans. This one simply be the 77 lots that are proposed to go to Glenbrook.
Any of the commission have any question for Mr. Rice at this time? Mrs. Smith?
Move to vote. Good to go.
All right. No question?
I think legally we have to have public hearings,
Okay. All right, well,
to be sure.
we'll open it up for a public hearing. If anyone want to speak before our commission, please come and sign in. Thank you. If not, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you. No question? Mr. Duke, you have anything else to say?
No, sir, nothing further. All my comments were covered in the first presentation.
Thank you, sir. All in favor of resolution preliminary plat Glenbrook subdivision plat number 3, let it be known by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Rice. Next order of business is a replat, Lake Haven, plat number 2A, 104 Lake Haven Way, owner Robert Morris Jones III, and the Potential Energy LLC. Mr. Duke?
Yes, sir. Some of you may be aware from previous action, there was a strip of property along the lake in Lake Haven that was purchased from the second developer to own that property. And now that group that purchased that small strip that you can kind of see on the aerial is asking to replat a piece of that into the original Lot A in Lake Haven, plat number 2. Staff has evaluated that. We see no objection. That area had already been encumbered by previous replats, and see no reason to object to this request. And the same is true also with the second request under tab number 4 in your packet, which is a replat to lot number 10.
Okay. Does anyone have any question for Mr. Duke on Lake Haven plat number 2A? All in favor of...
Yeah, let's get a motion. You have to have a motion.
Motion.
Need a simple motion because we didn't have a resolution. Can we do both of them at once?
You can, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I move we approve the replats of Lake Haven Plat 2A and Lake Haven Plat 2B as proposed.
Do I hear a second? Second by Mr. Smith. All in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
How many of those do we like now? How many of them are done and how many of them aren't done?
You talking about Lake Haven?
Yeah.
There's probably one left there along the edge on the east side of the lake that's not done. Everything on the west side sold is one piece. So.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
You got some on miscellaneous, Mr. Duke?
Yes, sir. I have two items. Mike probably would have gone off if this had gone along this way. I apologize from that aspect.
Sounds like somebody done their homework, Mr. Duke.
At the last meeting, I mentioned that the federal government was through the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA has reissued or is reissuing flood maps for Autauga County and Elmore County. And I apologize for the scale of this map. We would have done larger, but certainly we have larger if you want to look at it further. And hopefully real soon this will be on online city website. What you have before you is a map that shows areas that will be added both to the floodway and to the floodplain or the special flood hazard area as a result of the new maps. It also shows you in a different color areas that will decrease. Just pointing out the shades of the red, the red and green represent increases and decreases in the actual floodway. That's an area where building is precluded by city regulations. The areas in the kind of the magenta and cyan.
What?
Cyan.
Pink.
Excuse me, the pink and the blue. How about that? Sorry.
That's all right. You work for the city of Pratt when we understand.
You're making too many printers.
Exactly. I have looked at. Yes. We'll move on. These colors represent areas that will increase and decrease in the what we call the special flood hazard area, which includes the floodway. But if it's in that area and it's not in the floodway, you can build in it, but you are restricted in how you can build and at what elevation you can build at. So the reason I present that to you is to make you aware. When we're looking at subdivisions, we take this into account, and that's usually when you see it. If you recall, the last time we talked about Lake Haven 3, floodplain was a significant issue. There are areas along that stretch of Pine Creek where Lake Haven is located that some will decrease, some will increase. The area that I will point out to you that is fairly significant is along Nolan Creek, which did not previously have a full complete study. And Nolan Creek is the area to the west that borders the Winfield subdivision, stretches up into the Golson Place subdivision, and some of the areas along Simmons Road that we've talked about in the past. These areas now have floodplain represented where they did not. That doesn't mean there wasn't a floodplain there before. It means that it was an unregulated floodplain that is definitely wet, definitely had potential for flooding, but now the city will be obligated to regulate that. And the residents may, depending on their financial situation, whether or not they have a mortgage on the property, will probably be required to have flood insurance. So just wanted to make you aware of that. We're in a 90-day comment period at the moment where the city will accept comments that then will have to be forwarded on to FEMA towards the end of October. And again, that will have some bearing on how you look at properties, or could have bearing on the way you look at properties that are brought to you for development. Yes, sir.
Does that mean that back part of Winfield, those folks there are going to have to buy insurance? Their insurance rates are going up. Is that what that means?
It's likely. We're doing an analysis to kind of look at that. I believe that it's likely that the area is wet, has been wet. People that built there recognize that. Most of those lots, I dare say all of those lots were built up somewhat for house pads. But they will be recognized by the federal government and by their lender as being in a floodplain. So they probably will have to have flood insurance, but if they're above the base flood elevation with the first floor of their house, they will be allowed to buy what's known as a preferred risk policy, or at a lower premium. We, from our perspective in the planning department, we looked at that as from the standpoint of it's better that people know that there is a flood risk than not. And it is better that they have an opportunity to buy flood insurance, which I'll use this as an opportunity for commercial. You can buy flood insurance for any property in the city. You do not have to live in a floodplain to buy flood insurance. In fact, if you do not live in a floodplain, you buy flood insurance, the rate is minimal. It's very affordable. So this is an exercise in both identifying risk and letting folks know what's coming, and also giving them an opportunity to buy flood insurance if they're in an area that might experience a flood. And the reason that's important is because your homeowner's policy does not cover flooding. And the only way you would be able to collect from the federal government if you experienced a flood is if this area were declared a disaster. And there's a limitation on the amount that FEMA then could come in and offer you to pay for flood damage. It usually is somewhere around $30,000. That is generally not enough if you have a severe flood to cover the damage to your property. So flood insurance is really the only way to do that. So that's what we're doing, is trying to make sure that folks know that. And the fact that these meetings are recorded, I don't know how many hits we get on YouTube, but this is also an opportunity to put that out there. You'll be seeing more of this on the city website in short order. So that's the first item, and I appreciate the time.
Now, one question.
Yes, sir.
Well, a couple questions. Who determined the flood elevation, and how is it determined?
That's a very good question. These maps are produced by the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Emergency Management Agency. The city does not have any say in the models that are used to create these flood maps. These are standards that are set nationwide. They're performed by engineering contractors hired by the federal government or their state partner. In this case, it would be the Alabama Department the Alabama Department of Economic and Community Affairs, and the division there called the Office of Water Resources. So the only part the city has in these maps is to provide good data, and that's why you can see in some cases there are decreases in the floodplain, because especially along the Alabama River, the first flood maps that came out, especially for our area, were back in the 1980s, and they were based on some pretty basic data and historic data. Over time, we've been able to provide good aerial data, good topography data that helps make these maps better and take out areas that don't necessarily need to be in the floodplain. So that's a long answer to your short question. I apologize.
The tan on the maps, the tan area of downtown. What does that mean?
That is the existing floodplain. The tan areas, the grayish and tan on the map, represent the existing floodplains and floodway. Downtown, if you're not aware, from basically the end of Court Street all the way to Washington Street, east and west, and then north up to about 5th Street, is in an area of shallow flooding. It has some protection from the levee that was built in the 1940s, but it's still classified as a floodplain area, mainly because of what we call inside the levee flooding. Okay, it's when the creek gets up, and all these creeks that have to penetrate the levee can't get into the stream, then you start to see some backing up. That's gotten better over time, but it's still a definite possibility.
Another question, did Candlestick Park flood yesterday?
It didn't, and frankly, Pine Creek is an odd creek. I'll just say that, in that it's hard to predict when it will flood. My rule of thumb, having been here many years, is if it floods in Holly Court, which is a good ways up Pine Creek, then you're going to experience some flooding much further down in the basin, which Candlestick is at the bottom of the basin. We did not see any flooding in Holly Court. We had about a couple of inches below the bridge there in Holly Court, so it was just not that type of event.
Mr. Duke, I do apologize, and I did send an email out, or I had an email sent out to the council, but there was some flooding in Campbell. Yes, sir. I do apologize for not copying you on that.
And be sure I'm clear on that. Usually, what I consider to be flooding is Candlestick has a problem with just backing up anyway. Okay, so there's water in the streets there, mainly because their drainage can't get into the creek. Because, well, they have a high area along, it's not an official levee, but if you have some really overtopping of the bank, that's what I consider to be serious, and I don't, to my knowledge, we didn't have any of that, but may have, and I apologize if I...
First responders went, I did not, so
But
I knew to keep out of the area.
But the short of it is Candlestick Park is one of those areas that where these maps would have been very useful to have when that was approved by the city. I don't know that any of us were on the. Mr. Nelson might have been the only member that was on the commission at the time. You know, these maps serve a good purpose of helping us as planners, that includes y'all, understand what's happening along that creek and whether it's advisable to allow something like Candlestick Park to ever be built. You know, there was flooding there the day that they put the first trailer in, and you know, good mitigation planning would say that you wouldn't allow that type of high density, dangerous type uses there in a floodplain.
Well, the reason I ask is obviously been in the papers lately, and then when I rode by yesterday, the shopping area was flooded. I don't think there's any question about that. So that's the reason I asked the question. So
Right.
Now, I don't know whether it got up trailers or not, but the shopping area was.
Yeah, it was
So
definitely higher water than normal, and you know, that's the other thing we're seeing along the whole basin is the development above, further up in the basin creates a higher level of runoff, even if we have all the detention features we have. So,
All right. A different question, same question. The area that's Alabama Street, Florida Street, whatever that, Sunshine Acres, what do we call that? Whatever that is
yes, sir.
is obviously an issue. And have y'all talked about plans to address it other than making sure those folks know?
Yes, sir. We're actually working with the county as best we can to put this information out there. Again, that's going to be a kind of a surprise to some of those folks. That is it's a new stretch of that floodplain that's never been mapped, and will have some impact on how that develops. If you've been to Sunshine Acres, you know that it is a fairly low and wet area when we've had the kind of weather we've got now, or had in the last couple of weeks. And I always will come down on the side of it's better to know than not, and make those folks aware. From a regulatory side, that's going to be the counties to regulate. We issue building permits for that area, but we coordinate with the county to make sure that they're aware that units are going in and they're elevated to the proper level.
Do we know when the new maps will be filed, like the official? Are we going to give them time to purchase flood insurance at the current map where they'd be grandfathered, and you know, if they buy it now, they don't have to be subject to
That's right, and that is part of what we're trying to get out there is that and Mr. Smith, I'll tell you that actually has changed a good bit with the new act.
Yeah.
There is some grandfathering, but not as much as there has been in the past. And with new maps, they will probably be required to buy at the current rate. So, as far as to answer your first question about when they'll be effective, they won't be effective until early part of next year. I don't have an exact date yet. They haven't said that.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody have any more? Oh, Mr. Duke got something in?
Out there on Simmons Road, you got a mess, ain't you?
Where's Simmons Road?
Man, that's terrible. Simmons. Bottom of the Togger Hill. The road goes across there. That's washed completely out.
Oh,
They just
yeah,
can't get out underneath it.
I know some people.
Everybody got one?
Okay. The item you have in your hand is it's a draft of basically a replacement for the sign ordinance in the existing zoning ordinance. This was a draft that we last looked at in 2002. It was not adopted. The reason I'm bringing it for you now is Mr. Bowles contacted me a couple of weeks ago and asked some specific questions about our sign ordinance and whether or not changes could be made to it. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'll be glad to let you pick up.
Okay, as y'all know, my business is located on Cosford Road. I don't know if you ever noticed my sign out front for Private Carpet. It is yay tall, very small, gets the point across. Everybody knows where my store is. I don't have to have a huge light up sign that's you can see from the interstate for people to know where I'm at. So I asked the question because what happened to me personally is when the gas station came in, they threw up the sign and I didn't catch it until it was too late and it blocked my billboard. So now you can't see the billboard when you're driving up the road, and it's personally affected me of the tune of about $400 a month is what that sign value decreased because of that. I don't see why we can't do like when I was in Florida for vacation in Niceville. Every sign, Walmart, McDonald's, wherever you went, that sign was sitting on the ground, and it was small. And I promise you, I found Walmart just fine. It's not that big of a deal to have a small sign because more and more communities are going that route because these signs look so bad. What I'm asking, I'm not asking to take our signs that we have presently and make businesses spend unnecessary money and change their signage. But from this point on, we need to have a set of rules that it's going to be on the ground, it's going to be so big, and only so high off the ground that you can go. And then if, let's say, McDonald's one day comes up and wants to put a new sign up, at that point they would have to go back to the size that we require. And I think it's high time that the city looks at that. If we're going to be progressive and move forward, this is one of those steps we need to be progressive with. Okay? Thank you.
I'm just going to tell you, when you read through the draft, you'll notice that it doesn't necessarily meet everything that Mr. Bowles was talking about. This is, though, our recommendation several years ago to deal with some overall issues in our ordinance, dealing with the fact that we regulate political and commercial speech differently, and that has generally been an opportunity for folks to challenge ordinances and have them thrown out. And I'll give you an example. There's a great deal of discussion at the moment about regulating off-site signs or billboards. Generally where those get challenged and billboard companies win is where you have different categories of signs based on what's on that sign. Okay, the sign is considered by the Supreme Court and all the lower courts to be speech. Okay, and if you try to regulate the speech, okay, the content of that sign, that's where you're going to run into trouble. Regulating the aesthetics of the sign or the functionality of the sign, meaning what size it is, where it's located, how many you can have, that has been upheld by the courts for many, many years and is not really open to challenge. So what this draft does, it looks at eliminating the discussion about whether it's a commercial sign, whether it's a political sign. A sign is a sign is a sign. You know, it doesn't matter what you put on it. You'll read in here, for instance, that residential properties, you're allowed to have one sign of a certain size. You can put buy carpet from Ray Bowles, or you can put vote for Ray Bowles. It doesn't matter what you put on that sign, but you're only allowed to have one. Now, that may not be where you want to settle, but that's the way we've written the ordinance so that there's some protection against a challenge from a speech perspective. But again, this is a starting point. This is not certainly not ready for adoption. It still allows, this draft still allows for signs of a certain height, which is different than what Mr. Bowles is proposing. It needs some discussion, and I told Mr. Bowles I would bring it up and bring it for y'all's consideration, see where you want to go from here.
I think it's a great idea. We don't need big signs.
All right.
And yeah, you're right. You got to do them all. got to treat them all the same, but that's fine too.
Anyway, be glad to move forward in that and however you want, and not necessarily have to do anything today for that matter, so.
I can see the smaller signs, but when you've got several tenants that all want their sign, then we've got to compromise and say a business can have more than one sign.
Yeah.
Or a complex can have more than one sign.
Right.
Such as, we try to put all our tenants on one, and then we have folks leaving because they don't have enough signage, or they say they are.
Sure. Yeah, this is one of those issues that seems like it would be pretty simple on the surface. And I tell you, if you take that attitude, you'll be surprised the day you have a public hearing and want to talk about it. The best way to approach something as complex as sign regulation or major overhaul to your regulation is to start with some kind of committee to look at that, and not necessarily one that is all planning commission. I will give you an example. The committee that was set up to look at landscaping requirements included a heavy component from the Chamber of Commerce. And the good thing about that was when it was time to look at adopting what was proposed, you had most of the business community standing before you saying, this is what we want to see. So I would recommend that if you want to look at a change to the ordinance, it certainly needs to be something managed by the Planning Commission, but you need to look outside the commission for some definite input. And I think that the chamber is a good place to start. Adding citizens to a committee is a good place to start. And again, that may not be something you want to jump off in today, but I think that.
Why not?
I agree. If that's where you want to go, I'm ready to help you.
Smith?
Joe, I know when these people are having sales and all, they're supposed to come down and get a permit.
Yes, sir.
Okay, this last Saturday morning, Wright Street, just before it goes into Poplar, the house on the right, when you're going east, they had one. That was dangerous. It's a wonder we hadn't had some wrecks. The cars coming in, they didn't start, you know how they park on both sides of the street?
Yes, sir.
Nobody can get through. And I went out, did it, and then come back through it just to see how it was.
Right.
And I don't know who gave them a permit or what, but it shouldn't be done that close to an intersection, I don't think. If you do, somebody ought to be there to guide the traffic before somebody gets hurt.
Yes, sir. That's something worth looking at. That generally is regulated on the enforcement side by whether or not they get a yard sale permit.
Where they put it up is.
And in that case, that's really something that's going to be gone faster than we can get back to it on a Monday morning. So, the police department is the best entity to enforce that one, and I'll pass that along to Chief Thompson and see if they can certainly look out for that.
I just pull it up. Just pull it up when you're right there by it.
Yeah, we do a good job of, we think, and we may be wrong, but we do a good job of trying to tell them that, they can have their signs out there during the sale, but they need to come back and collect them. That's frankly the biggest problem we have is the signs that are left.
Now, they may have had one, I never seen a sign.
It's just the traffic that was a problem, I guess.
I never seen a sign.
Okay.
Never did. I'm not saying they didn't have one, but I did not see.
Yard sale itself.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know they can do anything.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that you as chairman, and Mr. Duke and Mr. Bowles get together and propose a committee to look at the sign ordinance and come back to us next meeting with a proposal for committee members.
Second thing.
Mr. Vice Chair, did the mayor have anything to do with this?
He did not talk about it, but maybe we will.
Thinking along the same line somewhere?
Right, okay.
We'll make sure he's on there.
Mr. Bowles, don't speak to. Because I know, see, I like Roy too, see, I like his comments. All right, Mr. Duke, anything else?
You need to vote on that because
You want to vote on
that motion.
that motion? Was there a motion?
Yeah, I made a motion that we, that he said
Second.
that you and he get together and propose us a committee and bring that proposal to us at the next planning commission meeting.
Did that warrant a motion? I mean,
That was a motion, yeah.
It was a motion.
I think it ought to be done by 5 p.m. today.
did you just amend his motion?
He did not amend.
Mr. McCarthy, I didn't hear anybody second it.
Second.
Tim did.
Well, we can only have 1 second. Would you do that again, please? That's all right. All in favor that Mr. Duke, myself as chairman, and Mr. Bowles come together and form a committee to select people from the public, I suppose,
Ever how y'all want to do it.
to look at our sign ordinance, a proposal for sign ordinance. All in favor, let it be known by saying, raising your right hand.
Yes, all right.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Now we go.
Anything else, Mr. Duke?
No, sir. Thank you for your time.
Meeting's adjourned. How come we didn't adjourn this before we?